In this video, I'm going to be talking about USCIS's proposed changes to the I-864 Affidavit of Support. Now, these proposed changes are calling for more invasive, detailed information, as well as makes it more burdensome on anyone looking to sponsor a family member for a green card. If you're interested in learning more about these proposed changes, please keep watching. Hello everyone and welcome back to another video. If this is your first time watching one of my videos, my name is Stephanie D'Angelo. I am the founder of D'Angelo Law PLC. If you haven't already heard, USCIS recently proposed changes to the I-864 Affidavit of Support and its related forms. Many are saying that these proposed changes are unnecessary and unlawful. The purpose of the Affidavit of Support is essentially to protect the American taxpayer. It's a contract between the sponsor and the government saying that the sponsor of the green card is financially responsible for their family member once they come in as a permanent resident. What that means is if the new immigrant that comes in, if they rely on any federal benefits, any public benefits, then the sponsor would be financially responsible for reimbursing the government. As part of that Affidavit of Support, sponsors have to disclose their financial information in the form of tax returns, proof of income, and if they don't meet the income requirements for their household size, then they have to supplement their financial information with proof of assets. USCIS's proposed changes calls for detailed bank information. Before, you didn't have to disclose your detailed bank information. You just had to submit your tax returns as proof of income or proof of assets. And if you decided to use checking accounts and saving accounts for the purpose of meeting the assets requirement, then you would submit your banking information. But for those that only relied on their tax returns and their annual income information to meet the Affidavit of Support requirements, they were not required to submit detailed bank information. The proposed changes calls for everyone who submits an Affidavit of Support to submit detailed banking information. The detailed bank information that you would be required to disclose is your bank name, your account number, your routing number, as well as all of the names on that account. So if you have other account holders, you will be required to disclose all of that information. I do want to point out that sometimes you've already given that information to USCIS. Those that signed up for direct deposit when filing their tax returns have actually already disclosed that information. If the tax return you submitted to USCIS as part of your Affidavit of Support had your direct deposit information on one of the pages, then they already have your account number and routing number. But obviously not everybody signs up for direct deposit. Not everybody had tax returns to submit, and they weren't using their checking accounts or savings account to meet the assets requirement. So the proposed change would now require everyone to submit this information. The second proposed change is to require all Affidavit of Supports to be notarized by a notary public. In the United States, in order to have legal effect, an affidavit must be notarized. The I-864 Affidavit of Support is simply a form just like all of the other USCIS forms that get submitted as part of your immigration process. The only signatures that are required on the Affidavit of Support are the sponsor's signature, an interpreter's signature if an interpreter was used, and the attorney's signature if it was prepared by an attorney. So just those three signatures. If the proposed change would take effect, I would imagine that USCIS would issue a new edition of the form, which would have a section dedicated to getting the notary public's seal and getting it signed by a notary public. Getting something notarized entails presenting yourself to a notary public, presenting a form of identification, and having that notary public sign their signature as well as stamp their seal on the document. In many cases, you have to pay to get something notarized by a notary. I do know that if you have a bank account, some banks offer free notary services to their account holders, but you still would have to go to a bank to get it notarized, or you have to go to a notary's office to get it notarized. So it is adding that additional burden when preparing your immigration process or sponsoring someone, is that you actually have to go to a third party, a notary, to get their seal as well. And as I mentioned, in majority of cases, you also have to pay for that service. So those are the two proposed changes to the affidavit of support. It'll be interesting to see if it actually passes. One thing I have learned with immigration, and particularly in this climate when we are facing certain situations, even this pandemic, this is when the government takes the time to make certain changes that they've been wanting. I would imagine agencies and immigration support groups, of course, to argue against these proposed changes, but what I've learned is to always be ready for anything and never be surprised by anything. For one, I definitely didn't expect Trump to suspend immigration into the United States for those people that have already won a green card application and it was just a matter of them getting their visa stamp to come in. That was a surprise to me. So honestly, what I've learned during this time is to not be surprised by anything. If you made it this far in the video, first, give it a thumbs up and also leave a comment where you're watching from. I like to see when people are watching my videos from countries all over the world, so go ahead and leave a comment. That really makes me happy to see. But also, if you made it this far in the video, I do want to give a little bit more information into the affidavit of support that I think is very important to know when it comes to sponsoring someone for a green card. As I mentioned earlier, the affidavit of support is a contract between the sponsor of a green card and the government saying that they will be financially responsible for that family member that they're bringing in, that they will reimburse the government if the family member relies on any federally means tested public benefits like food stamps, welfare, Section 8 housing, things like that. I do want to point out that this law has been in existence since December of 1997. However, they weren't really enforcing the reimbursement of those benefits. In May of 2019, the White House released a memorandum regarding the legal responsibility of sponsors of green cards. What that memorandum said was it actually directed federal agencies to go after sponsors to seek reimbursement for those benefits. This memorandum directed federal agencies to enforce the law and seek reimbursement from those sponsors. The term of the affidavit of support is 10 years. So any sponsor that signs the affidavit of support, you're tied to that financial responsibility for 10 years. The only way to relieve your financial responsibility as a sponsor is if your family member becomes a US citizen, they depart the United States permanently, or they pass away. If you obtained a green card for your spouse, divorce does not relieve you of your financial responsibility. Also, you cannot contract yourself out of your financial responsibility because your affidavit of support is a contract with you and the government. So you can't sign a prenup, for example, with your spouse or your family member. You can't sign a contract saying, hey, I'm going to sponsor the green card for you, but I'm not going to be financially responsible for you if you take any federal public benefits. So that's very important to keep in mind. So that's all for today's video. I hope you found it informative. I did want to bring you that information regarding the proposed changes to the affidavit of support, but I also wanted to take the time to expand a little bit on the affidavit of support as a whole. That way, anyone that is getting ready to sign an affidavit of support knows exactly what they're signing and what they're getting into. If you enjoyed this video and you found it helpful, please go ahead and give it a thumbs up. Don't forget to leave a comment. I answer all questions that are left in the comments. If you have a request for a future video, or if you just want to say hi and let me know where you're from, go ahead and leave that in the comments as well. If you want to be notified the next time I upload a new video, make sure you're subscribed and turn your post notifications on by hitting that bell button. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.